Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Ice Cream event in which the Eyestalker is added to the game. So this week, Mist of Scales ends up reaching 29 stars. We have ourselves the return of Tower of Doom, and almost all of the rings coming into the game. I believe we're only missing two more until we start getting the next cycle of weapons, which should be by very late this year or very early next year. But anyways, let's start and get into a couple of things. First things first, the Eyestalker itself. Great time to stock up on green-red arcanes. Quite a few things end up using that. You can get two for 400, one or 200 each as far as getting them. As far as the troop itself, it's interesting in premise, though in practice it's probably never going to get used. It is weaker than... It is basically supposed to be a budget devourer, but is weaker than quite a few other similar options under low rarity, such as Gluttony, and that one brown... yellow one that does it based on like 50% if there's 13 plus brown on the board. But basically, this thing will steal 6 mana from an enemy, so far sounds horrible. However, there's a 5% chance to devour them for each mana drained. So of course, assuming you mana drain something for the full 6 mana, that will end up being a 30% chance that you can end up devouring them. There's two issues with this. Obviously the standard anything immune to devour, but also, more importantly, anything immune to mana drain. If they have immune to mana drain, this ability does literally nothing to them, since you won't get the mana drain, and since you're not getting the mana drain, you have no chance to devour, because there's no base chance on this devour. So overall, not that good compared to other low rarity devours. Biggest thing it has going for it that's rather unique is it has Death Touch plus Impervious while having devour. That's honestly not too bad of a setup. If this was like a mythic setup in this way, and this just had a way higher skilled ability, it would actually probably be considered a half decent mythic. But the biggest issue is just this ability doesn't do enough. It doesn't have any follow-up, doesn't do something when it gets a kill, has no board control. There's just already things out there that do it for low rarity that this thing is probably not really going to be used at all. And obviously, once you have higher rarity stuff, you're definitely never going to use this. If nothing else, as we mentioned, it does allow Mist of Scales to reach 29 stars. There are currently 2 kingdoms in contention for 30 star. And honestly, off the top of my head, I do not know which one of them is actually happening first. However, yeah, there's currently Mist of Scales and Pride Lands. It really comes down to which one you want to end up going for stat-wise. This one ends up giving permanent attack, whereas the Mist of Scales will end up giving you permanent armor. So, of course, this is for things like Rowanne, Guard's Avatar, whereas this is for pretty much like every skull build in existence. So, it really just comes down to which one is your preference. But they are both 29 star, which I believe are the 2 tied highest red kingdoms. Not sure which one's reaching at first, but they're both pretty good options. It really just depends what do you want. Do you want armor or do you want attack? If you want armor, go for Mist of Scales. If you want attack, go for Pride Lands, as far as red deeds are concerned. Anyways, aside from that, let's start getting into all of the other things. So, Avent Keys, of course, Mist of Scales this week. With that being said, here is everything that you can end up getting from it. The things that you cannot get include the following. The 5 faction troops from that of the Dark Pits are not in drop table. Aside from that, I believe it was just the Terror card. The Terror card of the World, which of course is in the Vault Key drop table. Aside from that, it's a pretty skippable week, I would say, overall for Avent Keys. There's just like a few things that you might want to pick up, like Vinoxia. I personally don't like using it, but there's a lot of really good builds for it. I believe I actually showed one team for it this week that ends up using it, on one of the lower rarity ones, which it isn't quite a low rarity option, but synergizes really well with Marilith. Of course, if you don't have Marilith, really great thing. Honestly, I would say the biggest MVP of this entire kingdom. By far the strongest thing in this whole kingdom. It's a low enough rarity that you probably already have it laying around. If you don't already have it maxed, I guess you can get some more copies of it. But for the most part, yeah, unless you're like looking to get this thing 30 starred, or 29 starred, it can't currently get 30. But unless you're planning on like maxing this place or getting a 20 star for the stats or something similar, not really much to Avent Key for. Most of the mythics here are pretty skippable. The ones that you even do want to go for are very situational, like for example, Oriali with Scorpius is pretty strong. Nothing else, I guess it's useful for some weeks. But things like Mambasera are just like weaker versions of things that already multi-hit, like Tina 9000 and others. And Medusa just does nothing. It's like a stone block mechanic troop, and it isn't strong enough. There's not enough stone block synergy currently within the game. So overall, pretty skippable week unless you're going for a few really nice utility things. Like there's a few Empowers here, there's Marilith, stuff like that. But there are already naturally such low rarity stuff that you probably have them laying around, but if you don't, you definitely want to make sure you have at least one copy of them, like one copy of Vinoxia, one copy of Marilith, one copy of Tapon, stuff like that. Just to make sure you have them for utility purposes if you're like earlier in the game and haven't ended up picking them up yet. Anyways, so yeah, overall, pretty skippable week, unless there's a few utilities that you end up needing that you don't have or want to max in order to get Kingdom Stars. As far as the guild-related event, of course, we have Tower of Doom. Most things to note with Tower of Doom is definitely spend, if you have the spare gems, 500 gems to get the Doom weapon. You can technically get this from Soulforge, however, it is way better overall value if you simply get it from the event itself. And this also, of course, still gives you double points. This is a new feature as of the other patch about a month or two ago. So you do want to make sure you have to use this ring. You don't have to upgrade the ring. Having it completely unupgraded is fine. You will still get the 2 times points. But it has to be on your team. Either just hero tanking up front or simply like all the way in the back so it doesn't block anything. Either or. But it has to be on your team in order to get 2 times score. Technically, you only have to do this on the Doom fight, but I personally do it on all of them just so you don't have to keep switching back like every other fight almost. So aside from that, same gameplay as always. Make sure to scout out all the fireballs, all the heroisms, all the unlocks, all the unluckies, all the more valuable ones that your guild wants to go report back on. The rooms are exactly identical across your guild, but not across other guilds. So, you know, the 30 people within your guild, you will all have the exact same layout, so communicate with them. But, you know, if you try copying ours on stream, it will be completely different than whatever your guild has. So make sure to communicate with your own guild what the rooms are, and just simply take all those rooms and do not take excess rooms because every single room counts as a sigil, unlike things like dungeons, for example, or underworld, I should say, or I will eventually say the right thing. Delves. Delves, of course, they end up using 1 sigil for the entire floor. That's not how these work. These consume 1 single sigil per battle. So you only want to take the good battles and ignore all the bad battles, which is why you scout them out. But otherwise, gameplay is the same as always there. Just got to make sure you use the ring. Hey, tribute's ready. How big of a tribute? Yeah, 31. Or, you know, 30. But 31. I always say, like, 1 higher. But, of course, 31 tribute, 30 gems. Of course, the gems the first thing I look at there every single time, though. Man, anyways. So, weekly events. This Tuesday, we have ourselves the Dark Pits faction. Nothing really special there. Green restriction, I believe it is. Wednesday, we have the Mist of Scales pet, the little Venoxia thingy. Thursday, we have Assassin Hero class. Very situational hero class, but very, very strong if you like RNG. It has a lot. It's probably the most luck. Not even probably. It is the most luck-based hero class in the game. It has 30% skull dodge, a 10% insta-kill per skull, and every time it gets a kill, it has a 7% chance to get another kill, and that does stack with the 10% on skull, and it does stack with itself. So you can theoretically get a 10% off your insta-kill off a skull, which kills their last slot. Then that triggers a 7% insta-kill to trigger their last slot again. And that 7% insta-kill that just triggered on the 7% insta-kill could then trigger another 7% insta-kill for all lucky 7s. And then you just wipe the entire team with 1 skull. Very rare that happens, but not impossible. And it definitely can happen. 1 skull wipe. It's basically the main gimmick with this. Is that you just like pick up double kills and ever so occasionally triple kills. And if you're absurdly lucky, 1 skull just wiping an entire team. Which is really funny, but very rare. And not something to expect. Anyways, Friday we have ourselves the new Deep Delve. So we're getting a new Deep Delve for Wild Court. That's the one that basically has that one brown-green that like auto wins everything. So yeah, he'll be pretty good for Pure Faction. Pretty easy one in that regard. But yeah, we're going to be having a new troop there. As per usual, I'm pretty sure the new troop is useless. I'm not sure if we have gotten a single good troop from a Deep Delve that like actually changed the meta of what you would run for Pure Faction. Because I know for that one, it definitely doesn't. You're still going to run like just the brown-green guy. Like 4 of him, or just 1 of him into like 3 to legend or something. So yeah, I'm pretty sure the meta is not going to change at all from that. But yeah, it's already so strong, it doesn't really need to change. Anyways, as far as Soulforge, it is a pretty forgettable Soulforge this week. Great week to just not spend anything. If you are looking at something to spend on, I guess Catches the Bull has fallen off the meta a little bit, but still really good damage. Really bad against stealthy teams, and honestly, I don't feel like there's as much stealthy teams these days. Other than Life and Death Weaver, I don't feel like there's that many like full spam stealthies, like, you know, double stealthy, triple stealthy kind of teams, because he's really bad against those, but they're a lot rarer these days. But overall, biggest thing holding him back, no follow-up. Also, he could fall behind. His boost ratio is based on all of his stats, so if he loses any stats at all, armor, HP, attack, anything, he will lose a lot of damage potential, and he has no follow-up, no board control, no anything like that. And while it is a lot of damage, and potentially even more if you get it buffed up and everything, it's just too high of a liability between him losing stats as well as not having any way to follow up into an extra turn, into extra mana, into anything like that. So for the most part, it doesn't really get used as we keep getting more and more infinite loops and just good synergies within the game. And stuff like this is just a single cast and just ends its turn. Tends to get weaker over time. Some of them still hold up like Tina 9000 and such over time, even Tesla and such. But things like these have definitely fallen behind at times and just not as good as it used to be. And for the most part, pretty much every mythic here is skippable. Also, Medusa, oddly enough, in both Avent Keys and Soulforge. Though you're probably not going to need her for either unless you're just like full completioning out the kingdom for like 29 star or something. You probably don't need her. One thing that you might want to pick up, while these weapons aren't really used outside the context of this week, there are a few good weapons this week if you want to build teams around it. A couple of which we're actually going to be using in the teams that are about to show, all of which will be in the description below if you want to copy paste any of them. And I did remember the Underspire teams this time. I forgot the previous week because the previous week had a week where both the Underspire and the week-long event was the same team, so we didn't need it for, but then I forgot to rebuild the slots and didn't build the teams for last time. Though it's kind of similar this time around. You basically spam true damage and AoE. But anyways, yeah, there's a couple weapons that will help you out through a lot of the modes this week, particularly Underspire. Like the ones that boost based on Naga. I believe I used this tome once or twice, the one that boosts based on Mist of Scales, which is quite literally the restriction for Underspire this week, so really good for that. Explodey weapon, I believe I used for one of them. This is boosted by Naga as well. Or not boosted, but it gives a positive stats effect to all Nagas on the team. And stuff like that. Like, you want to get those utility troops ideally, or utility weapons for something this week, but you're not really going to use them much outside the context of this week. So overall, pretty skippable Soulforge this week, unless you're looking for very specific weapons to assist in the weekly events. Anyways, let's start all the way from the top. So, Green Tower of Doom. For the very first one, keep in mind, you do have to use Ring. Or at least on the final Doom fight, but ideally just on all of them, just so you don't have to keep switching back and forth. For this one, we're basically running a Marilith mana team and just running your biggest damage source and third slot. What this is really depends on what you have. We're running Diamantina, of course, because we have Diamantina. However, you can put absolutely anything here that hits all enemies and you'll be fine. We're running with Archer, but if you feel like you need a spell or a similar mechanic like Elementals just to stay alive, that could work out too. Main reason for Archer is just because of Green Storm. And of course, we can end up utilizing that across the entire team. Also has a natural half mana start. For the next team here, we're going with basically just Rowanne spam. Trying to get Rowanne up, cast it out, cast it once, cast it twice. One thing that we actually get to utilize is this ring does directly synergize with Rowanne. You are forced to use it, and of course you can, build a team and put it all the way in the back. Not on this team, you wouldn't want to do that, but, you know, generally speaking, if you want to do that with a team, you can. However, on this one, we actually plan to use the ring. Of course, on this team, we're not using the ring at all. Don't use the ring. We just simply have it there to tank for Marilith. However, on this team, you actually can use it. It gives a bunch of magic to all allies, plus 1 additional for every single time you've upgraded it. Keep in mind, you do not have to upgrade it at all to still get the 2 times points. I personally did because we have the points to do so. However, the only thing this is really doing is 10 extra magic to all of your other allies, which doesn't do that much for Rowanne anyway, so you could easily just not upgrade at all and still get maximum points. And the main benefit that you do get from it is not increased at all from having this upgraded, and that is giving a bunch of armor to all green allies. Of course, Rowanne, green ally, that kind of has to be, otherwise you can't use it for this mode. And because of that, you just give it a ton of a ton of armor. And of course, Rowanne's main gimmick is that it boost ratios from armor at 2 times. So all the armor that you give it, let's say like 50, that's the extra 100 damage per cast, and you have 2 of them potentially. And then, yeah, you just cast them, and that's a lot of extra damage. And you also gain a little bit of attack against the Doom, which doesn't really do much since you have the insta-kill. But anyways, next we have ourselves the Underspire team. So, as far as Underspire, it is, of course, restricted to that of the Mist of Scales. So for this first one, we're using that one Mist of Scales weapon, because you're restricted to it anyways. We're using Marilith once again as a primary mana accumulator. Oddly enough, we're actually using Oriali as a main damage source. This is very similar to what we had to do last week with like Crimson Bat and Draculus and all that kind of stuff, and Grey King. It's pretty much the same premise of what we had to do last week, except we have an actually good mana accumulator. Last week, we definitely suffered a little bit in not having too many good mana accumulators, but this time around, we have a standard Mass Destroyer, and you just get a lot of value from this. So there's a little bit of chip damage too, gains a little bit of attack, but the most relevant thing is that it has a bunch of Destroy. One other thing that's pretty useful for it too is its Fire Link, so you can actually give it an additional +2 red and go into that. This particular banner, I didn't do that just so we can minus purple. However, you can go +2 red into her +1 red, so if you surge into her, you'll be able to get the mana up a little bit quicker. So you do have access to that. Oriali has a little bit of poison, but most notably will be your main true damage option. Also has resummon if your hero happens to die. And lastly, Basilisk, which you could replace out for something else if you really wanted to. But this is mostly for the cleanup in case they revive. It's really good at taking out a single target, as it will do double on its initial true damage if they're poisoned, which you could easily do for your ally. And it will do double off its second true damage if they are stunned, which you can easily do by taking a brown. So you could potentially end up doing double, essentially hitting them 4 instances of true damage. Well, 2 instances of true damage, but they both get doubled. So you can hit them very, very, very hard. It's essentially the full effect of a full AoE true damage, except it's all concentrated on one singular troop, making it really good when something gets resummoned, though you do still need to reapply the stun and poison to them. But that's pretty easy if you take like a brown extra turn that just did both of them, so not too bad. Might be a little bit hard to get brown on this team though, but very easy to get extra turn for reality, obviously. And even then, you're still hitting with 3 instances of true damage instead of 4. Anyways, next we have the lower rarity Underspire, and this could be described as spam Marilith until you win. We are using Venoxia here, which is a legend, a little bit of a higher rarity thing. However, of course, it's an Avent Key drop table, so a lot more accessible this week than it normally is. Aside from that, we're using this as backup summon. Of course, this weapon you might not have laying around, however, it is in Soulforge right now. It explodes a bunch of manas, then grants a random status effect to all Nagas on your team, and most importantly, has resummon. So when your first Marilith inevitably dies, you will keep resummoning stuff there, and then your main team is just the shield into Marilith, into Venoxia, with Venoxia being your main damage source, Marilith being your main mana accumulator, and the shield being there to not die. We are using elementals here. It is a bit quicker to run Archer and other similar things. However, we are running it just to stay a little bit safer on the lower rarity team. But if you feel like you won't ever die, just run something that can win a little bit quicker like Archer, and you'll be good to go. Next, we have ourselves the faction event. It is a brown-green for the Dark Pits. As far as what we can use, of course, under brown-green, hero weapon could be anything color-wise. We're just using a standard Guards Avatar Quick Kill team. You can end up replacing this out for Quick Kill Rowanne, which is something like Urskia, Shield, Rowanne, Leprechaun, and you can't run Mirage Queen, so you can either double up on Rowanne or double up on Leprechaun. But basically, you can also do the same build of this just with Rowanne if you want to. But we're going for the higher damage option. And aside from that, just to show you something a little bit newer here. Of course, Infinite Loop Todd. There's a lot of ways to do this. This one, we're just going down the Essence of Evil route, so we can end up disabling things. Also, this one is pure green, so you can technically run this for Tower of Doom as well. So if you want to run like any Todd Infinite Loop with a pure War Gear team, you can. The main reason I didn't is because a couple of these don't work as well for it. For example, Wolf Garrick, which is commonly used on these kind of teams for the magic bonus and attack bonus and everything, mostly the magic bonus. This doesn't really help as much because you can't get this Devour against the Doom. Like no insta-kill, no Devour, no nothing like that will work on it. So similarly, you can't throw Essence of Evil at it either because it's immune to all those effects. So a little bit better for doing the Underspire because there won't be a bunch of immunes to those. Well, you might still have a few Devours, but you won't have anything immune to Essence of Evil. Whereas the Tower of Doom is immune to both Essence of Evil, Wolf Garrick, and similar things. But you can still run this for Green Doom if you want, but this is meant for the higher level of the faction. And lastly here, we have ourselves the Dark Pits team, which despite the new Deep Delve troop, does not get changed at all. We have ourselves the Sledge Paw here, which you don't ever really want to cast unless he's about to die or you need the board control. You mostly just have him tank. He has 25% score reduction into 6 life repair every single turn, so he ends up getting his life back if he has taken any damage, as well as having a little bit of reduction there just to make sure you don't die. And then you keep spamming Hexrat until you've killed out the entire team. Deals a bunch of damage to an enemy and then all enemies below them. So ideally, you just keep casting this on the first slot. It hits full AoE, and then you just keep doing that until you dies. So yeah, just going for pure full AoE kill there. Next, we have ourselves the final team, which is for the Thursday class event, which is for Assassin. Assassin means that we have to use Nagas specifically from Mist of Scales. For this, of course, what better way than just spam Marilith? We're using this for +3 red link. We're using it for mana accumulation. And you can use pretty much any weapon here. It doesn't really matter. And we're just going for Black Manacle. Nice, cheap, good option with Archmagus. But you can run any weapon you want here that hits all enemies simultaneously, and you'll be good to go. And, of course, we do have the faction event on Friday, but we'll go over that in its own little separate video once we end up getting around to that. As we'll go over the new Deep Delve variant, some teams for it, and, you know, everything we normally do for it. Anyways, guys, that will wrap it up now, for now. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave in the comment section below. All of the teams mentioned in this video are in the description if you want to go and copy-paste any of them. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.